Hello, hello, hello. This is my pie rock. I showed it before. It has the pie sign on it. And this pie sign was made by the blue god, by the ocean. And this is a sacred rock. And I want to use this rock today because I thought this will fit the subject of the Saint Nikolaus story. So, my name is Nikola with an A in the end, not Nicole with an E in the end. Nikola is more rare than Nicole. Nicole is very common in Germany and around the world. In all Western countries, Nikola is rare. Even in Germany, it's more rare in the United States. Nikola comes from, that's kind of like, I don't know. I think my mother didn't want to use the name that is common, so she chose Nikola. And Nikola is a female name in Germany. But since there are some Italians in Germany too, with the name Nikola spelled the same way, that's why she had to use my aunt's middle name, Christiana. Paul is probably going to get mad at me for this, but I think it ties into the subject. I think it's very interesting. Christiana is a very common older name for women in Germany. Christiani, with an E in the end, Christiana. And that's my aunt's name, my mother's sister, and so she gave me that middle name because that was still required at that time for a girl. So today it doesn't matter, people can call their children any name, whatever they want to call them, Gnocchi, so whether they're boys or girls. So, and Gnocchi, that's a nice name for a baby, really, actually. I love gnocchis. Delicious. So, but this color here and the sign, the pi sign, this is a very heavy rock, full of iron. And I think this fits the subject of Saint Nikolaus. And Nicole, Nikola, and also all the male versions of that name, they all have to do with that famous Saint Nikolaus, I believe, So people always thought about, whether I have a girl or boy, I'm gonna call them after Saint Nikolaus. So I bet my mother was not thinking about Saint Nikolaus. How much you want to bet? Okay, so I don't think she was thinking about that person or that story or Christianity in general. They left that evangelical, Pentecostal, whatever Lutheran evangelical church that they used to belong to from childhood. They left that long before I was born. Okay, so, and my mother is an atheist and my dad is an atheist agnostic. So I am making a video and I don't want to turn this off again. This is my third attempt already. But this is interesting information, I think, all of this, and I'm thinking about this. I think about the etymological origins of names and words in general, and I think it's very important. Language holds a lot of information about the origins and the evolution. There's always an evolution that predates any kind of origin. There's another origin to every origin. So it's an ongoing development that is happening, obviously, in history. And language reveals a whole lot about it. And sometimes I take the time and I study those names, such as Nikolaus of Myra, who was a Greek Orthodox Christian bishop. And he came from a very wealthy family. And because of his religion, and I know it's not just the religion, of course, when people become good Samaritans, that also resonates with their true nature, of course. So that man was very conscientious and very loving, and he loved children, he loved giving presents. And I believe that he also traveled through Europe. I don't know if he has traveled as far as to the North Pole or the Scandinavian countries. So people claim he has, some people claim he has. The information about Saint Nikolaus, the Bishop of Myra, is very diffused, is very confusing. Different information about, there's different information coming from different people, coming from different cultures. Each culture, or also religious affiliation, brings with it another association with that man, or people fight over Saint Nikolaus now, which is not in Saint Nikolaus' legacy. His legacy was that of peace and unity, but yet people will fight over a figure like this. That's ours. Nikolaus is our figure. No, he belongs to Greece. No, he belongs to Turkey. No, he belongs to the Roman Empire. No, he belongs to Norway or Sweden. No, he doesn't. Or Germany. No, he belongs to all of us. Okay? And I know that is also his nature, but he also was he was a bishop, he was an Orthodox Greek Christian, and he was depicted, there were paintings made of his face. He looks Greek, but like from very aristocratic backgrounds, very intellectual, very finely chiseled face, and someone who studied also philosophy, but of course he was religious. He was very indoctrinated by that religion, so he would probably always be looking at things from that framework of religion and religiousness, and that strongly added to, and it's always usually a combination of things, it's a combination of all kinds of things, of childhood, of the way they have been indoctrinated, what kind of stories they have been told, what kind of morals they believe in. And religion is a very, very, very strong influencer on people's minds, and that's why I find it so dangerous. In some rare cases, when that combines with a good heart, which is genetics, then he will take that religion and he will pick out the good, and he will read the good, about Jesus, what he said, be good. There are some other people that will leave out certain things about Jesus. They will leave out that Jesus was a vegetarian. And most people leave that out. They will ignore that. It doesn't fit into their narrative. Because they're selfish, because they are because they have identified themselves with being a carnivore and so on. So all these different, they're different identifications. Some of them are tied with their sexuality, with their testosterone, with their masculinity, and this is pertaining mainly to men, of course, where then the identity with being a man takes over the identity with that religion also, and they can be in conflict with one another. They can also work with each other in a cherry picking way, and all of these things, we have all of those. This is all ego based, of course. So there are so many thoughts that go into this. I want to try to analyze all of this and put this on the table, so that all of these components can be looked at individually, but then we have to put them back together and look at it from the sky perspective and see how these individual components of the mind, of psychology, of religion, personal identifications, sexuality identifications, and so on. Dr. Sapolsky talks about this. I'm in the middle of watching a very interesting interesting conversation by Dr. Robert Sapolsky talking to someone called Huberman, who's a physician. Very, very interesting conversation. Maybe I'll put the link under the video. Dr. Sapolsky is my number one professor because he goes at all of these subjects with such an enormous passion, and it radiates out, and his passion for neurology grips everyone. I've talked to a lot of people, also people I wouldn't even think that they would, even some Christians that watch Dr. Sapolsky's Stanford lectures. I was surprised. So that's how enigmatic he is, and how he draws people in, and they kind of forget about their old ways of thinking, and they get drawn into reality and into facts and into neurology and all of this. And he bravely took on religion, and in at least one of his Stanford University lectures, he took on religion in a very courageous way, knowing that there were a lot of religious people in the audience. So, and they had a sour look on their face, you better believe it. Because what he was saying was very much challenging their beliefs, and was kind of making them have to introspect. And that's what a lot of people don't want to do, because the ego doesn't want to introspect. The ego would rather not know about their neurosis, and the ego wants to think that their identifications and so on are that they are morally support worthy or whatever, when they are not. Okay, so but very interesting conversation. I still have to watch the rest tonight. I wanted to make the video now after I was painting. I did some household work also, and all of this is important. And I was thinking about Saint Nikolaus, and I have researched him yesterday, and so it's very interesting. I already had this feeling that there must be all kinds of different beliefs about this figure, because he was living around 400 AD, so 400 Anno Domini, which is our time counting frame, that we are in right now, which means after Christ, after the birth of Christ, when they started counting time. Okay, so and then we have of course time before him, and the Buddha was supposed to have lived about 5,000 years before Jesus Christ, or something like this. So I mean, he may even be older than that. So, and it is very difficult for archaeologists, for historians, to really figure out, unless they find something which they can do carbon dating with. Carbon dating is a chemical procedure where they can find out approximately, but pretty accurately, what era approximately, in terms of evolution, quite accurately, they can see where a fossil or a structure like this here, a molecular structure like this here, which era this comes from. So they can do this through the carbon dating process, which is a chemical process where they can see the carbon molecules, and they can see the lifespan of the carbon molecules, and when the carbon molecules have turned into something else. So I don't know exactly the process, but according to the stage that the carbon molecule is in any of these molecular structures that they find, they can pinpoint approximately the era, at least, like whether it's Jurassic or pre-Jurassic, or whatever the names for all of these different eras are, or whether there were vertebrate animals, mammals who already existed, and so on. They found a fossil, for example, called Ita. This fossil was named after the daughter of the scientist who was working with that scientist, I believe, from Norway. And this fossil had been stored in archives for several hundred years. Someone found it and it was traded around, and they knew it had value. Some rich person bought it, stored it away. Then at some point people die, then it gets discovered by other people, and so finally ended up in the hands of a scientist, and he was able to carbon date it to 47 million years back, and it came from the area that is today Germany. But back then things looked very different. It was a jungle. It was a tropical, actually kind of tropical rainforest, sort of. So different trees, different climate also. And this animal is on the human lineage, they found out. And so that is our ancestor, and of course it goes way, way, way back to the first amino acid 3 billion or something years ago. Okay, so evolution took a long time, so it's not like it's a sudden quick switch or something. There are changes that are happening through mutations, and they can be beneficial or they can not be beneficial. And depending on how beneficial they are for survival, they will survive those characteristics. Okay, bigger size, has always been the one to survive because the bigger animals ate the smaller animals. And so we can clearly see this in evolution. So until they become so large that it will become a problem, like with the dinosaurs, where when they have meteor showers like this that come down on Earth, the big ones are not going to survive, and the little ones will survive. The little geckos and stuff like this that can crawl deep into the recesses of mountains and stuff like this. And then from the little geckos, they are on our lineage. The little geckos then were the ones with hair, survived the cold ice age that was following them, and then it goes from there. That's on our lineage. Okay, then a rodent animal evolved out of that hairy gecko, or hairy salamander. No, not so. Yeah, I don't know what they're called, but they were dinosaurs, but small dinosaurs, of course. So there were dinosaurs. They were all called dinosaurs at that time. Birds evolved from dinosaurs, so we evolved from dinosaurs. So yeah, it's just a trial and error. Calamities happen, dramatic stuff happens, and then whatever it has the highest chance of survival, those will survive. They will pass on their genes, and that's how it goes. And it's not just that, it's a lot more complicated than that, a whole lot more complicated. There are so-called jumping genes. Dr. Barbara McClintock discovered that in somewhere in the 1960s or something, and the scientific community was widely opposed to her work. She didn't care. Finally, Dr. Sapolsky went to visit her and told her the good news. They caught on with her science. She said, I'm glad to hear this. They finally caught on. But she couldn't care less. She was just so passionate in her work. She was absolutely, that was her whole life, working on as a molecular biologist, working on gene development and jumping genes, and on the transcription factor, which is where genes can actually be influenced by the environment. They can turn themselves on and off. This has also evolved, this through trial and error. The DNA that was able to do that survived better than the ones that were more rigid. Okay, so it's very, very complex. It's so complex, you have no idea how complex this is. It's meta complex. It's metaphysical. It goes into the metaphysical, of course. There is emotional trauma that can get embedded into the DNA. I believe also through this transcription factor, to this malleability of the DNA, and this in turn can be passed on to future generations. This is very interesting, all of this. That's why, that's even more of a reason why someone, before they give birth, before they decide to have a baby, to say, oh, I want to heal my mental illness first. This is what I did. Okay, so, and since I haven't healed my mental illness yet, I don't want kids. Okay, it's that straightforward, actually. And it would just be such chaos. Do I want to pass on my trauma to my children? that's embedded in the DNA, and with my own mental illness and all of this, there are all these things that have to be taken into consideration, but most people don't know anything about biology or about their own bodies, their own minds, their psychology, and so on. So that's why it's so important that people are being informed about this, that they learn about this in school, that we have to have this as mandatory curricula in schools. This is that everyone needs to be forced to go to school. Everyone, even people who don't want to, but forced not in a forceful way, but through incentives. People have to be given money, they have to be given credits, they have to be given all kinds of things that will feel good, not just in terms of future planning, because most people don't do future planning, but in terms of immediate reward. So, and that will get, when we train a dog, we use reward. Why don't we do this with children? So if children don't get rewarded, then they don't feel really motivated to go to school, and school becomes then like something they don't want to do, something they find uninteresting. But school has to become completely internet school, okay, and it has to be done through interesting professors like Dr. Robert Sapolsky to make it interesting and fascinating. And there are other professors that are well spoken and that make it interesting. So we need to have internet lectures by great people for everyone. Okay, so very important. And where everyone can take their time, where it's not under a time pressure. I always had a lot of problems with deadlines, with specific, with learning time frames that where I had to learn something until the specific exam and the multiple choice tests for statistics, for example. That was a lot of stress. And when we're not that much into math, that's very, very, very tedious work to learn about this. And when we're lonely on top of it, then that's really hard to do. And that caused me to get sick. So caused me to get sick twice even. I had a fallopian tube inflammation that was pretty intense. I ended up in the hospital because of those statistics exams. So that was pretty rough. So Saint Nikolaus, the Bishop of Myra from Greece. Today it's called, I forgot now that area where he was from, but today it is northern Turkey, I believe. So but during his time it was Greece. So I get maybe Greece was taken over later on by Turkey and other countries, parts of Greece. So all of this belonged to the Roman Empire, and during his time, Christianity, the Christian religion, was still relatively new, 400 years new. So the Romans had they had multiple gods and different beliefs and all of that. And they were fighting against any kind of new religion that was coming on into the world, and they were persecuted, and it was very difficult. But then once the Christian religions took over, they persecuted others. So it's that human ape nature, of course, that then uses their identifications with their particular religion or group that they identify themselves with, and they say, this is our team against the other team. And this is religion in this sense happens in many different forms. It can be all kinds of different things. It could be one school class against the other. It could be a sports team against the other. It could be a nation against another. Okay, and then it becomes something more abstract, like religion, and then it's like our religion against the other. They may be going, Jehovah's Witnesses will join Jehovah's Witnesses in Germany, and they're from the United States, and maybe even during a Cold War or whatever, and that they will still be feeling this community and this belonging to each other because they are belonging to the same religion. But this is an abstract identification, and that causes, or any kind of religion, that causes the Mormons, for example. So, and then they think that is our group, and it has become an eternal idea, identification and group, that they all find each other everywhere on the planet or something. But either way, whether it's a nation against another nation or a religion against another religion, it is dualistic. And it leads to conflict, it leads to war, it leads to suffering, it leads to persecution, it leads to exclusion. Okay? It leads to a caste system. It leads to people excluding someone else because they don't belong to their religion. The way the Jehovah's Witnesses people have already treated me. People where I thought, oh, I found friends. As soon as I said, I will never become a Jehovah's Witness, they were finished with me. Okay? Finished, whether they wanted to or not. Okay? My massage therapist, Lisa, she wanted to be friends with me. We have a lot in common. She's also into health food and all of this. She chose that religion. Her father is an atheist. She's from a more intellectual background. Then she said she needed a religion, so she went around and looked for a religion, and then she found the Jehovah's Witnesses. And then she thinks that's her freedom of choice or something, but it's not. It's not anymore. The moment she is adhering to that religion. So in the sense of Nikolaus of Myra, I guess Myra was the town, in northern Turkey. At that time was still Greece. He identified with this religion, this Orthodox Greek Christian religion, was still relatively new on the planet. He identified with that, and that's a problem. Then they think they need to. Then they make that what Jesus Christ was living and teaching into a dogma, into a dictation. The moment it becomes a dictation, then it's no longer reason. So then it becomes rigid. He has to give everyone his money or he will be punished, and then he will live miserably or he will live like an ascetist. There's ascetists also from India, a lot of those fakirs, and those are kind of people who will beat themselves up, who will live in poverty with 1 meal a day, and all of these things out of this idea that this will give them immunity to a bad karma or some punishment during their lifetime or future lifetimes or something. But that in itself is a total misunderstanding. Okay. And so I believe that the bishop was also very, very strongly dogmatic in this way, where he had to give things away and all of this. Coming from a rich family, he gave all of his money to people and then to rescue children, but there was also compassion involved in it. It's a combination, of course. But when people such as Professor Dr. George Price, for example, comes to mind, who falls into that category of someone, I don't know whether he comes from religion, but he believed that, and that's also in itself dogmatic, when he thinks he has to give everything away to other people, and it starts to feel good also. It creates a dopamine loop addiction and all of this, and became addicted to that. Dr. George Price he was a psychologist, he did a psychological experiment with himself where he wanted to see whether people would appreciate it when you give them something, or whether they would just be taking and taking and taking. And so he would start to give money away more and more and more. Then he would start to give his clothing away, start to give his winter coats away. He finally died from hypothermia in the cold winter in England. And so that ended his experiment. He became his own victim of his own experiment, of his own dopamine loop addiction, or also maybe believe that this is good to do, to give everything away. But it obviously isn't. So each person has to protect themselves first. I have to be strongly protected and love myself and be feeling good and feeling calm and safe in order to give this calmness and that safety and that love to other people, and the sunbeams of love, and in order to inspire other people to love themselves as well. So someone who just gives everything away is not inspiring other people. They're just letting other people take advantage of them, and they cause themselves a demise. They ride themselves into a calamity and a demise. They end up dead, those people. That's not the way to do it, of course. So I don't know exactly how Nikolaus of Myra died, but I think pretty much going in that direction of giving everything away. And he died on December 6th, somewhere around 465 or something like this AD. And they made a celebration day out of his death day. It's like, I didn't know that in the past. I found out yesterday. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to celebrate that. Why should I celebrate something where a good Samaritan died? The day when a good Samaritan died, when he became destroyed. Why should I celebrate the destruction of a good Samaritan, of a good person, of a giver? Okay. So, no, that doesn't make any sense. So other people, they're just fighting over whose Nikolaus it is and to which nation or group he belongs, which religion he belongs to. This is already totally ridiculous and insane. Okay. So, but I want to dig a little bit deeper, and I already told Paul about this on the way to this house while we were driving along the 101, looking at the sunset, looking at the glowing sunsets, gorgeous. I was thinking about Saint Nikolaus, and I knew that the day was coming. It was actually the next day, and I wanted to make a video about this. So I told Paul that what I know for sure is that because they put stockings out in front of the front doors, have been for many, many, many generations, for hundreds, thousands of years. So at least hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years they have been doing this in the Scandinavian countries. And why would the Scandinavians identify themselves with a Greek bishop? I don't know. Maybe they did. Maybe they adopted that name from the Greek bishop. Maybe the word got around what the bishop has done in all of this. A lot of people have become Christians, also in the Scandinavian countries, of course. But I'm not sure if the Greek bishop was feeling so comfortable in the Scandinavian countries where he would actually live to become an old man. So I don't think so. I think he's traveled around the world, but around Europe, but he probably would have gone back to the southern regions where the weather is warmer. I believe that this tradition with the stocking and with the Santa Claus figure comes from old Scandinavian men, maybe not just one man, but several men out there in Norway, at the North Pole and so on, that would travel on a sledge pulled by reindeer. The reindeer live there, they're native to those regions. They actually have hooves that are like bent like this, pair hooves that are bent like this to really big, they have really big feet, really big hooves that are adapted to very deep snow, so where they can wade through very deep snow. And so what did people do? Of course, they exploit, or as they always do. They use the animals, whether the animals like that or not. They put harnesses on them, they breed them, they domesticate them, and then they make them into slaves pulling the sledges. I hope they didn't overwork them, but that's how they got around in the winter time, of course, because they had snow that would be 10 feet high sometimes. And in the winter time in the Scandinavian countries, food was scarce. People they had a barter system. They had to trade, One person would be making animal hides, another person would be a hunter, and they would be trading. It's all bad, it's all terrible. So this red gown with the white trim actually comes from, I believe, it's reindeer skin. So, and with sheepskin underneath, something like that in that, because they had to really stay warm. That it gets to 50 degrees minus, okay, in the Scandinavian countries in the winter time. It makes me shiver just thinking about it. I don't want to live in a place like that. So they had several layers of animal skins. The sheep skin underneath, with the woolly part towards the body, then that would come out in the trim like this on the hood, and then the reindeer skin, really thick skin on the top, which is reddish. And maybe because the reindeer had fawn colored coat, so maybe that still had the coat, the hair on it. I'm sure they didn't take the hair off. Okay. So reindeer skin with the reindeer coat still on it. Reddish brown, So that's where this red idea of reddish comes from. So, and I know that the Benedictine monks, they have robes like that, in these color themes also. I don't know whether that has to do with a Santa, original Santa type of outfit or not, which comes from the Scandinavian countries, or whether this robe, because this is also happening with the Buddhist monks, which is interesting, which have lived all the way out there in far Asian countries that were not even connected to the Scandinavian countries, and yet they use the same color, like this burgundy brown type of robe. And sometimes ideas like this may also travel through telepathy. Okay, they're called morphogenetic fields. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake talks about this. It's very interesting, all of this. So ideas, thoughts, inventions, also certain achievements that haven't been achieved before. Those kind of things can travel as energetic vibrations through morphogenetic fields, through very long distances, and they can come into people's minds and enter into the mind not in a very alert, aware, conscious way, not in a top consciousness, but in a lower conscious awareness, in the subconscious awareness. And then these ideas can also then show themselves to the people in meditation, in dreams, through conversations, through being in a peaceful, restful, physical, mental state. In order to sort out our lives, we have to be in a complete stress-free mental state. The moment we have stress, we pull everything up backwards. We do things backwards. I have to close that door. It's cold. I have to close the door. It is so cold. All the way up. So I hope it heats up now. I really hope so. We have styrofoam layers on the ceiling. There's my artwork. And also I want to show you my artwork on that side here. I have my artwork in my shelves. We use practical stuff, as you can see. Everything is practical. Tupper furniture. Okay. Practical, cheap, movable, versatile. Okay. Indestructible. That's what it is. And it works for me. It doesn't have to be a Chippendale commode. Those were, very, very expensive. Carpentry, embroidery, carving of drawers and stuff like this. They call them commodes. Kommode in Germany. And then I saw in English that they actually use that word for toilet. I didn't know that. But they had sort of like carpentry commodes back in England and stuff like this. So, and the kings and queens, they had their pots in embroidered, expensive, carved, chiseled out, Baroque style with golden angels on it. Carved wooden cabinetry with pots in it and stuff like that. So Baroque, that was during 1600. Nikolaus of Myra was around 400, so a long time before the Baroque era, even a long time before the Middle Age. So I would say Middle Age started around 1100 with Hildegard von Bingen, the very famous Christian nun. I wrote a fairy tale about her. So also, I don't want to I really wanted to talk about that first. So what happened today is, this is infinitely sad, but I'll put this in the video description also. A world famous racehorse had a heart attack racing on the racetrack while racing. Today, December 6th, on Saint Nikolaus Day. He fell over dead, heart attack, died. They did an autopsy. They found serious steroid testosterone injections. And I'm not finished yet. I'm still talking about the horse right now. So still making the video. Still making a video. He can't hear anything, so it's very difficult. I have to do sign language now. Even with the hearing aids, he can almost not hear at all anymore. So he said he would do the brain chips. He would get those brain chip implants from Elon Musk. I would not do it because I would feel so exposed. I would feel like they would be reading my thoughts. They would be reading my anxiety, my OCD, and all of that kind of stuff. So, and I already feel super like I'm a complete open book. Like on the internet, this is me. Totally uncut, uncensored, unedited. So brutally, radically honest and a lot of people find me obnoxious. Okay. Of course, a lot of egos will find me obnoxious. You know, but I can't worry about this. It's just, this is just, if that's evolution, you know. So, but you know, but the racehorse fell over, and I cried when I heard that. And I said, Paul, I wish you had not told me this. There's not even a petition to sign. Why do you tell me this horror story? I hope the horse didn't suffer. But I think a heart attack is always painful. And 3 years old, a young horse, makes me infinitely sad. And so Paul said, yeah, but there's one good thing. There's only one, no, not good thing, but like there's one plus side of that situation, that this racehorse, I call him Saint Nikolaus. He probably has a different name. I believe this is the reincarnation of Nikolaus of Myra. I really believe that. You know, I have these intuitions about this. People come back in many different forms to explore, to find out what is it like to be a horse. What is it like to be a dog? A man will come back in his next life as a pig or dog or horse or a woman. Okay, a woman will come back as a monkey or a man, or in their next lives, in their future lifetimes. Okay, they go back and forth between genders and animals and existences in order to explore what is it like to be that person. You know, a black person come back as a neo-Nazi in his next lifetime. The neo-Nazi comes back as a Black Lives Matter rioter, as a Black Panther. Have they learned anything? Not that much, right? They're still, the mind state is still in the exact same pattern. Okay. The same pattern, just a different emblem, a different color, a different religion, a different idea, a different upbringing. Okay. So a different identification. That's all there is. So it's not different. It's the same pattern. Okay. The same dualistic pattern. But in order to learn, we have to see things from the other person's, the other being's perspective. Okay, so Paul said he can blow the whistle. Yeah, the horse can blow the whistle on the horse track, horse racing industry, and this can wake people up, and this can shake people up to the point where they say, no, this is unacceptable, we're not going to accept this anymore, this is animal exploitation, this is wrong. Okay, this is totally unacceptable and unethical, and it needs to end. Okay, so I'm going to end the video with this. Okay, peace and love.